Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming to listen to me again. This is the second episode. I'm recording this at 2 in the morning. It was a bit of a long day. So even though I was thinking this would be October 17th, it's already officially October 18th on the calendar. And today I'm just going to give you like a focused zoom in episode of what this day was like. So this day, for the most part, was quiet. Israel is still organizing its forces. Hezbollah in the north. For those of you who don't know, Hezbollah is a terrorist group that basically took over Lebanon many years ago. So Lebanon has a government, but Hezbollah has a stronger army than the Lebanese army. So they basically control Lebanon. They've been making more and more aggressive acts, taking more and more aggressive acts in the north. As I think I mentioned last time, probably just a form of virtue signaling, showing that they're part of the battle and trying to keep Israel's forces split. But they do have a lot of ammunition and, in theory, could decide to take action, as I'll talk about in a moment. And in the south, Israel has been once again doing some targeted bombing, and we've killed, I think, another one or two more leading Hamas militants um, over the past day. I haven't really checked to see all the list. Yesterday, Hamas began part of their terrorist, activities by releasing a video of one of the hostages where she talks to the camera. I have not yet watched that video, but clearly it's designed to make people, weak at the knees from thinking about the poor hostages that really are in a horrendous situation in Gaza, and weaken our resolve to fight. So there was some discussion of that, and we had the visit by the German Chancellor, German Chancellor, sorry, that arrived, and there was also like a filming of the fact that when he was about to leave, there was a missile attack, so they had to like slam to the ground, and you might see videos of that. And Biden is on his way. I think he might be arriving tomorrow in order to show support and perhaps do some major coordination as to where things should go from here on. Remember that there are also Americans in the people that were killed, and I think also American hostages. So there may be also some discussion of that. I have to admit I was deep in other things today. I'll mention a few of them maybe soon. So really, what was I doing? So one of the things that I've been doing, and is sort of maybe indicative of some of the things that are happening in Israel, is that there's so much volunteering going on. And I've been also volunteering as part of this civilian war effort to try and help in the high-tech area with developing tools that will help Israel. I won't mention what tools they are, just for purposes of, not giving anybody that is not for Israel any kind of information about the kinds of things that we're doing, but trying to give what I can. Of course, I also have to work, so some combination of those two. But days are full. That's just the work stuff. There's kids, and I have a kid who's studying in a yeshiva, which is a boarding school. So there's a lot of things going on with him too, and so just a lot of stuff that basically living in a state of emergency, right, and constantly triaging things that come up, which is, I guess, why I'm doing this at 2 in the morning, and not earlier. I think the things that I want to talk about today, first of all, is what you're going to be hearing about. I guess you might be hearing about it right now and over the course of the next few days. So in every offensive that Israel has, each side, I guess, tries to wait for something that is photogenic in their favor, or not so much in their favor as much as against the other side, because then they want to make a big deal out of it and send it out and garner support. Israel, of course, did that when the militants came in and murdered 1,400 people, including civilians, children, on purpose, searching them out, burning them in their homes, beheading some of them, killing babies. I know that there was a big thing about people claiming that it was fake news, that there were 40 beheaded babies. I don't know if anybody has said that there were actually 40 beheaded babies. It was just a combination of pieces of news, and then, like everything that goes on with these things, it became the fake news. But there are things that are indisputable for anybody who actually was there. And so that was, when that happened, Israel, legitimately tried to make the most of that to make sure that we would get as much world support as we could get. So tonight happened something that the Palestinians are already using to try and garner support for them. And I want to spend a few minutes talking about this just so that you have all the information that I have. And again, I haven't been doing deep research into this. I'm not a military expert or anything. I'm simply an informed citizen, okay, and somebody who has lived here many years and knows how these things work. So what happened is that, let's start from the end. There was a hospital in Gaza, and there was an explosion next to it, and people were, of course, hurt and possibly dead. I don't know the details. I don't know if it was a direct hit on the hospital or just next to it. But either way, the photogenic element of it is going to be a hospital, struck by some sort of explosive device, and people being hurt. And of course, by the Geneva Convention, you're not allowed to attack hospitals, ambulances, etc. So that would be an act of, a war crime, if you were to do that on purpose. So that's what you're going to see. And the story that the Palestinians are going to be presenting to the world, and that Iran and all of their allies are going to be presenting, is that Israel is committing war crimes by attacking this hospital. So I just want to give you some context to the story, so that you're well informed, so that you have, all the tools that I think you need in order to think about this in a critical way, not just because you want to support Israel, but just because you want to know the truth and you want to think about this right. I try, not that I think that the other side does this, but I try at least to, think about what is real before I try to think about what I want the truth to be. So here are a few facts. The first thing is that Israel has done already a investigation into this, and they have concluded that what is most likely is not that Israel attacked this hospital, because we're doing targeted strikes right now. We're not doing carpet bombing. And so we have a pretty good registry of what we attacked in which areas. And therefore, Israel has concluded that it is not that Israel attacked that hospital, but rather that it is most likely a missile that the Palestinians fired out of Gaza, and that was a misfire. So if you have a missile that is a very primitive missile and it veers off course, or something malfunctions, it might strike something within your territory, right? Because it falls early. Just watch all the SpaceX, spaceships that crash, right? And so that was what the IDF has concluded. And there's actually videos that citizens have uploaded showing, this actual rocket. You can see, I've seen at least one video, a bunch of rockets firing up, and then one of them veering off course and going to the side and landing early. So somewhere in Gaza, somebody got hurt, and it very well may be this hospital. Now, some of you may be critical of this theory, or not critical of the theory, but just say, well, of course, the IDF would say that. Um, you know, it's just it's part of the propaganda. And to that, I would say, first of all, if you want to come at this from a completely neutral standpoint and not believe either side, any more than the other, then sure, that may be that it indeed could be, but it also could be that it wasn't, right? So definitely no reason to believe the Palestinian narrative more than the Israeli one, the Hamas narrative more than the Israeli one. But on a deeper level, I also think that we need to look at the history, and we know that things like this have happened. This is not a new thing. Israel does admit when it has a misfire. Palestinians never admit when they misfire. You can just take a look and see. Try to find a case where the Palestinians admit that they fired into their own citizens in a time of war when it was to their benefit to say otherwise. I doubt you'll find a single time that they ever did that, not that I know of. And Israel has admitted making mistakes in the past. So, at least with one side of this conflict, you have somebody who seems to care about honesty at times. So that's one point that you should take into account. The other thing is that is important to understand is that the Palestinians, and we know this in the past, this is well documented, this is not, you can look it up online, as part of the Palestinians' strategy, right, they hide behind civilians. So they house up within Gaza City, using civilian buildings to house their command centers, their missiles, their weapons, well documented. One of the things you can see in some of the, if you're really interested and you look online, I think on YouTube you can find some of the videos that Israel publishes showing our airstrikes. And one thing you can see is that when you strike a building, so if it's empty of ammunition, it will simply, it'll be about a cloud of smoke. But if it has explosives, there will be secondary explosions, okay, additional flickers after the main explosion because it's lighting up that ammunition. And this happens all the time. So you can find, I'm sure online, plenty of these videos showing you that they do this. But not only do they use civilians, but Hamas has used ambulances to either smuggle weapons or to house terrorists that will use the ambulance in order to commit a terror act. And they will use mosques as their base of operations, and they will use hospitals. And I don't know if it was in the last one, but at least one of the one before, Hamas had their base of operations of their top people, their top militants, in a hospital. Okay, so this is like taking this idea of putting your own people at risk to the extreme, right? This itself is a clear violation of the Geneva Accords. This itself is a war crime. You have to understand that Hamas is conducting war crimes all the time. I mean, the thing that started this event is a war crime. Running into civilian houses, killing people that don't pose any threat to you is a war crime. They do war crimes all the time. And therefore, but specifically with regards to the hospital, this is the kind of thing that they do. Okay, they've done, they will do it again. So in other words, even if it was true that Israel attacked the hospital, it is very, very likely that that hospital houses its own weapon arsenal, is a active or a backup command center for the Hamas, simply because they've done it in the past, and this is well documented. So even if Israel had attacked the hospital on purpose, keep in mind that it may have been a legitimate target in that sense. And it's heart-wrenching, right? Imagine if you had to choose between having to attack a hospital where there are people that are sick, dying, babies, or allow the hospital to be there and then allow the Hamas to just operate freely and plan how to kill you. One of the things that I've been thinking about a lot recently has been, if any of you have watched the movie The Dark Knight, it's, a Batman movie. And The Dark Knight is when Batman goes up against the Joker. And I believe it was played by Heath Ledger, who really did an amazing job and also committed suicide soon after. And the movie almost wasn't released because of that. And the Joker in that movie is really portrayed fantastically as a person who is saying to Batman, look, you're just like me. I'm going to force you to go way beyond what the law allows and become just like me, just as evil as I am. And that's going to be my real battle against you. I'm going to force you to be evil because I know you don't want to. So that's going to be why it's going to be so heart-wrenching and so hard for you. And that's what Hamas is doing here. In other words, they know we won't attack the hospital, or that we will try it as much as we can to avoid you. They know we won't attack mosques because we respect these things and respect international law and respect, the moral concept of not attacking people in places of worship. They don't care, so they just use that against us. Now, just a week and a bit ago, they showed that they can care less about anything that has to do with morality, went ahead and tortured, raped, mutilated, so, if we had hid in a synagogue or a hospital, they wouldn't care. And so it's really quite, so I'm just saying it's possible that we did attack that hospital, and if so, very likely that there was a good reason for it. But of course, we can't know. But I just wanted you to have all the information and all the background. And I guess this leads me to the last point, which is that one of the things that's on my mind a lot is what, the international community, and when I say that, I mean like the West, right? So, the Western countries, the ones that supposedly care about the rule of law, care about international law, care about justice, freedom, and not countries like Russia, China, Iran, who are very pragmatic in their politics and will just do whatever is good for them, and to hell with the law, morality, or all those things. They just want to be in control. What are they going to do? Because I don't know. As an Israeli Jew, my experience is that the world's memory is very short. People mainly respond to pain. They see Jews in pain. 5 minutes later, they see the Palestinians in pain. And there's no real rigorous attempt at understanding the situation and planning correctly how to approach it and who to condemn and who to... it's very easy to say, just everybody put down your guns. Sure. That's easy for you to say. You're not the one who's going to have to pick them up 5 minutes later when this whole thing, gets inflamed again. Trying to actually understand what we're dealing with over here and actually process, what would you do under those conditions? First of all, why should anybody that's not in Israel care about that, right? But that's true about the laymen. But the politicians, they should say something. They should be honest. And at the beginning of this thing, and so far, a lot of Western countries have been very, very, actually surprisingly dedicated to Israel and adopting its perspective on things. But they have to keep it up. And there will be more of these hospitals and more things like this that happen because it's a war. And it's a war in an urban area where Hamas has built its base in an urban area, which means they're committing war crimes all the time. But nobody seems to, but as a rule, the world doesn't actually, take ownership of that. And, I was listening recently to some things about international law, and, like the world also is responsible for a lot of this. A lot of the money that was used to finance Hamas came from Europe and from America. Okay, because the way it works is that Europe and America give money to charity to try and help the Palestinian Authority, because if you're living in Gaza, your life sucks. And the reason it sucks is because all the money goes to Hamas. So they use it to build up their army. They don't use it to do better to give the citizens better service. And then they maintain this depravity, that they have this state of suffering, and they blame Israel, and then they get more money. I'll just give you one example of how terrible this stuff is. Okay, I mean, they say, oh, we need cement in order to build buildings, because Israel destroyed some buildings. But then they take the cement and they use it to dig tunnels and fortify their tunnels so that they can hide away from Israel. Or even build attack tunnels, meaning tunnels that go under the border and emerge. Imagine if you're if you're, let's say, living in Connecticut, okay, and you're bordering on New York, and imagine if New York and Connecticut had a war, and somebody dug a tunnel from, under the border and just appeared in your house one day. There are people that live this way in Israel. Okay, they're close to the border, talking 1-2 kilometers, and Hamas dug these tunnels, and they used the cement that they were given by European and American, funded by that money, and even directly supplied to them by them for these purposes. Okay. Another good example is, there's a really bad sewage system in Gaza, and people said, okay, we'll give you, we'll modernize your sewage system. They provided them with pipes, with metal pipes, so that they could build normal sewage. And the Hamas took those and adapted them to be rockets, right? You can imagine the cylinder filled with, explosives and other stuff. That's what they used those for. Again, how do we know this? Because at least I haven't checked about the pipes. But a lot of times what happens is you can see the bags, or the containers that they left on the side of their, let's say, weapons facility or whatever, and you can see where it came from. So, again, I haven't checked to see these specific things, if that's the evidence, but these are things that are well known, and you can probably find online the sources for them. So it's very frustrating to be told off by the world that we are being overly aggressive with the Palestinian, and specifically with Hamas, when Hamas has been funded by these very countries that are telling us off. And while we, of course, appreciate all the support we're getting from the US and from the EU, some of the EU members, I guess we all, feel like we deserve an apology. You guys are basically helping a genocidal organization. I listened today to this podcast about the international law, and the expert there said that you don't have to actually kill everybody in order to be, guilty of genocide. You just have to have a genocidal plan, and Hamas has a genocidal plan, and that we keep on giving it money. That's against international law to promote genocide through any means. So yeah, and this is where, I guess you guys can come in, talk to your representatives, voice your opinions. You can help us. This is one of those things that anybody with a heart, with a soul, with a conscience, who cares about what's right, can do something. Don't be silent. That's really where everything in the end ends up in. As being honest about what you believe, not being scared, and realizing that if you risk yourself a little bit, even, you might be giving a huge boost to people around you that feel the same way and just don't have the courage to talk. So I guess I'll stop with that. And I'll try and make these things like half an hour, not much longer, so that you can watch them in a shorter time. But thank you till now for listening. And I'll be recording more tomorrow, or I guess later today, maybe. This whole thing with the hospital is probably going to cause a lot of riots, etc. So I hope not too many people will get hurt. Have a good night, And excuse me for that little burp. And thank you again for everything.